Yeah. No, you're good. Give me 1 second. That's what happens. 812. Okay, now I'm good.
Yeah, very cool. Like, we understood when you kind of saw how they create like the frame or the stencil that they use.
I'm sorry, for the recent.
Some of these are easier.
Oh, yeah. 8.5 by 11 is good. Yeah.
These ones, these ones.
Yeah, for, maybe not per screen, but like for idea, you can probably put one on layer. Yeah, okay. So like the what is it, 4 or 5 screens? 5 screens, so you can probably fit all 5 on one 8.5 by 11.
Okay, cool. That's pretty interesting. So pretty cool. Is there really like small when I start out? I have a little bit. I just have a little bit. That's all I have. You want maybe like 30 minutes. Like 15 minutes. I got 15% water.
Okay, it's not 15 minutes. So you can stretch up to 2 hours.
Yes.
So Trump Wi-Fi and things can last one time. And then when you put in low carb mode, close out tasks, close out other layers. Yeah, put your other layers. So like you use this power.
Actually go to the partner. Yeah, text goes on top.
Just without using experience with it, so much this
It's partnership.
I got two. I got two with you.
Which professor? Professor?
The user, the TWC.
But yeah,
TWC, I don't know anyone in TWC.
I probably just take GIT anyway, so that's my next thing.
If you're thinking about taking a usability class in general, look for, I don't remember exactly what the number is, but Professor Pruitt teaches it, Deb Pruitt. She has an accessibility class, and then she also has a usability class. And you will learn exponentially more in that class than you will in a TWC class, but I'm biased, so.
Is that a GIT?
How do I spell the name?
PREW.
What's yours?
Like that, sorry, I can't spell in my head, so I have to write it.
Okay, Pruitt.
Yeah. Fundamentally, one of the best usability professors we have at this campus. Okay.
Oh, I think.
Oh,
wow. That's a nice one page.
But it's the same course, TWC and GIT.
And she'll hate that I did that because I think her classes are already like super full because she's great. But you should sign up anyways.
Okay. I'm gonna try to fit in.
Yes. How are we all doing? Busy week, right?
Still alive.
Still alive, yes. That's my quote for the week. Those of you guys that went to press check, thanks for coming. I mentioned that I would bring thank you cards and I forgot. So do me a favor, just write a little email in response to mine and I'll get it off to them. Today I want to go over a little bit of just prototyping. Prototyping has all kinds of nuance. So I'm not quite sure why this is there. There we go. So I'm going to give you guys some very surface level prototyping here, okay? It gets exponentially more complex. And really you can get a little bit crazy with prototyping. Give me 1 second. And this. All right. So this is what we built late last week. This is a very simple, low fidelity prototype. And we do have some navigation up here. So I want to take some time with you guys and really walk through prototyping, because the sort of obvious answer is, okay, you might take these individual sections and connect them to individual pages. So let's just build that really quick. We'll say that this is the home page. Oops. And then I'm just going to duplicate it. You guys should obviously make yours a little bit different. We'll make this the about page. We'll duplicate one more time. Actually, we'll do two more. Case studies. And then we'll also do contacts. You guys will likely have another one or maybe even two in there that will be like your individual case study page, right? So just keep mind out for that. Now, obviously, when we're creating a prototype, the purpose of a prototype is that it works like the real thing, okay? And that it sort of functions like the real thing. Maybe there's going to be a couple of things that aren't quite the same, but by and large, you want it to work and function exactly as your final will, right? Because the idea with Figma is that you should ultimately be able to take whatever it is that you're designing and hand it off to a developer, and that developer should know exactly, by and large, exactly what they need to be doing, right? There are some limitations, although that limitation gap is closing pretty significantly. Some of those limitations have to do with like some really advanced animations, potentially some micro interactions. Sometimes the limitations might be a developer limitation and not a Figma limitation. So those are things that you kind of learn on the job. What I want to set the precedence of, at least in this classroom, other classrooms you might have a different precedence, is that the expectation in the industry is not that you know how to prototype to the nth degree, okay? The expectation is that you can show how pages move together and that you can ultimately test them, okay? Whether or not a micro interaction looks exactly like it will in the final may not matter entirely, okay? Where knowing how to prototype to that degree might become helpful is, let's say, for example, your developer kind of isn't sure how you as the designer want that thing to look. You may then have to go and prototype it and kind of make it look the way that you want it, okay? Or react the way that you want it. But oftentimes that's on a very small scale. Usually you can sit down with the developer and have a little bit of a conversation about like, hey, here's this thing this competitor's doing and I want it to look kind of like that, right? You can do that. Oftentimes code is open source. So they can go and find that, they can pull that, and they can copy it and apply the style guide directly. There's not really a whole lot of copyright law in the internet. The internet was designed to be open source, okay? That said, don't obviously wholesale copy and paste designs from other competitors, right? That you can get sued for. But taking the way that a button reacts, there's only so many ways that can be done. Don't waste your time prototyping. Unless for some reason you're trying to do something very, very special in particular that has never been done before. And frankly, at that point, I would be asking you the question, why are we doing this? Only because you might be defying convention at that point, okay? So that said, I want you guys to really just focus mostly on simple prototyping. If you want to get a little bit more advanced, knock yourself out. But remember, the layout and everything are more important. You got to make it work and look good. So I'll share my screen again. We've got 4 pages here, only because that's what I have in my navigation. Your guys might have an additional page. Now, earlier in the week, we built out a couple of things. This is a little bit hard to see. So let me double check something here. I'm going to try to see if I can change my background color.
Just on the side, like on your right panel.
Where is it? Sorry,
On the
over
right
here?
panel, yeah.
Ah, yes, thank you. I always forget this here. Okay. There we go. Is that a little easier to see? Will that work? Okay. Yay. Gotta move a couple things around. Sorry, guys. All right, so we've got this component that we built late last week, and we're gonna, instead of connecting individual pages, we're actually gonna connect this component. Because again, if you build something as a component, the changes that you make to that component sort of apply to any use of that component. So it's important that when you're prototyping, you're not in the design module, and similarly, when you're designing, you don't want to be in the prototype module. They kind of conflict sometimes, although you can do some things in both modules. Try to keep that separate in your brain. So I'll go to the prototype module. I'm going to double click a couple of times until I get to an individual component, or rather an individual element, okay? So there's a couple of layers that we're working with here. You have elements, which are the individual things that go on the page. And then you might have a group, which I don't have any groups here, but that would just be very similar to like Illustrator, Command G, or Control G, I think it is on PC. And then you might have a frame. A component automatically makes something a frame. So get used to that. That can be a little bit confusing. And then you can also have a component. Okay, and then beyond that, you also have variables. I'm gonna leave that where it is. If you have questions about that, let me know. So I'm gonna start with the home navigation element. When you hover over this, you'll see a little plus sign, but only if you're in the prototype mode. Okay, and also if you're not clicked far enough in, that's gonna show up elsewhere. Okay, so you have to be really mindful of what you have selected, where your cursor is at, all of that. Additionally, it may show up, just depending on where your cursor is at, it may show up anywhere within that bounding box. Okay, it could be anywhere really. I actually find it a little bit easier to work on these zoomed out, although that introduces other problems. So I'm going to double click. There I have my individual word selected, and I'm just going to click that plus button and drag it down to that page. Okay. Now, this interaction, I want wherever it's at to change when the user clicks on it. Okay, so I'm going to leave that as an on click. This is maybe not the only scenario, but one of the few scenarios where you will actually want to use on click. Oftentimes, if you're introducing a micro interaction, something where like maybe the text changes color when you hover over it or something like that, you would actually want to use an on hover or a mouse down or something like that. So just take a little bit of time, do a little bit of YouTube and Google searching, figure out what each of those things do, okay? I'll be honest with you, even to this day, I still have to go and look up certain very specific prototyping things, okay? The expectation is not that you retain all of this inside of your head, although with repeated use that will come, okay? Get pretty familiar with some of these basic ones because this is what you will probably end up doing for most of your career. I'm going to duplicate that process for the about, and then I'm going to duplicate it again for the case studies. And then I'm going to click here again. And it really doesn't matter where you pull it from. Sorry, guys. There we go. Now all of those are connected. And notice now that I click on this page, all of those connections show up. It's because I connected the component and not the individual pages. Okay? Has anyone done prototyping before today? Did you guys normally connect the individual pages or did you normally connect the component? You did the component? Did anyone do pages prior to this? No? You? Okay. That's normal. components didn't exist up until we might be like 3 or 4 years in at this point. So they're still relatively new, but here's the thing. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. Figma, this is also really fun. I get to see myself very good. It's really tapping into my narcissism. It's great. Sorry, that was super distracting. Where was I going with that? Oh, Figma changes. Every year, Figma hosts a conference usually in San Francisco, and it's called Config. And usually right about that time, Figma changes a lot. This last round wasn't too horrendous, but the round before that, they went through and they kind of nuked the whole thing and started over. And while a lot of what came from that was really beneficial, it made everything that was on the internet a little bit outdated. And now, bless you, nothing is where it was in a lot of the online tutorials and things like that. So my recommendation to you is if you are looking up prototyping tips or anything online, just know that all of those things still exist. They just may be in a different area, or they might be called a different thing, or they may look a little different. Okay, so disclaimer. Okay, just be mindful of that. You can still do it. It just might have a slightly different step. You might have to connect the dots a little bit. Okay, so we did that. Now let's go preview it. Everyone see this little, it's gonna be a little bit hard. You guys can see it. Everyone sees that little play button in the top right corner there? Good. When you click that play button, you get a preview of your prototype. Now, hopefully I did this right. When you click on it, well, let me make a little bit of differentiation between the pages because then we're not going to be able to see whether or not it changes. So I'm going to make the background of this page red. I'll make this one blue. I'll make this one green. Sorry, that's going to be a little bit piercing for a minute. Okay, so now if I click to home, that's white, about, red, case studies blue. And then this one's not working. Can anyone tell me why it's not working? So there's multiple prototypes happening at once, and it's confusing Figma. So earlier in the week, earlier last week, we had set up this component for this button. And because this is prototyped with a variable, Figma's getting a little bit confused. It doesn't quite know what to do. There's partially a reason for this, and that's because we've set this condition to be mouse down and mouse up, right? And that condition is competing with the other one that I've set up to prototype the page, which is when I click, it goes somewhere, right? So it doesn't know what to do with that click. Do you want me to change the color, or do you want me to go to another page? And it's just gonna, I haven't quite figured out the science to this, but it seems like it usually defaults to the first thing you set up. Okay. So, in order to keep this sort of change, I would actually recommend set up a while. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. If you want it to just be a micro interaction, you can set up a mouse enter and mouse leave. Give me a sec. There we go. So now, when I'm just going to enter it and then I'll leave. Now that I hover over it, it's changing. But now that I leave, it's gone. But if I hover and click, it goes to a different page. Okay, so you gotta just, if you run into something where a prototype isn't working, double check how many conditions you have within that prototype and move some things around. Okay, try something else. That's kind of prototyping. It's a lot of let me connect one screen to another. But I want today to be a little bit different. rather than me standing up here and showing you guys how to do something, I'm open to your guys' questions. If you guys have something specific that you want to try to figure out how to prototype, maybe I can show you. Yes.
So a question.
Yeah.
If I would, let's say I done like the prototyping for the desktop version. I want to do the mobile version.
Sure.
Do I just take everything and just shove it into the mobile version, or can I change around and then have them interact?
You're working with a little bit of a different layout at that point. So remember how we set up auto layout? There's a little bit of, I haven't quite figured out the science to this, mostly because I don't care and I don't need to. Again, it kind of goes back to how much time are you investing into making your Figma prototype perfect when it's not the final output? You don't need to do that. There is a way within Figma, again, I haven't invested the time to learn it, where you can use auto layout to make this responsive. You're welcome to go and figure that out. I don't think that's a bad investment of time. However, oftentimes you want to sort of not redesign, but adapt your, nope, hang on, I'm not going to use that word because that gets a little touchy. You want to reorient your layout for mobile, right? Because oftentimes that size of button that you use for desktop may not work for mobile, or the size of image that you established for desktop may not work for mobile. Or you might want it to be in a slightly different order on desktop versus mobile. So, to give you an example here, let me go to, hopefully I have this in here. Might only have a mobile. Scheiße. Give me a sec, because I can find it. Mr. Storm, does this look familiar to you? Where is it?
You can search it too.
No, I know, I'm looking for something really particular. Somewhere in this, and I would have to, this is an example of me being a little bit disorganized, but somewhere I have a version of this where I also have desktop. But notice here, I mentioned earlier that you guys would rarely if never need multiple columns for a mobile, although you would set it up with a multi-column grid. This is an example where that might not apply. This is kind of an e-commerce platform. This is what our website used to look like, and I'm currently redesigning it. I'm hoping to have it done before the end of the semester so that I can prove to all of you guys that you can do anything you set out to do. But notice here that you've got two column grids happening on this, what we would call a product listing page. That's a 2-column. Here on the home page, it kind of alters between a 1-column and a 2-column, but nowhere am I using 4 columns. That doesn't mean that I don't have a 4-column grid, because I do, right? I'm just not using all the columns. I'm kind of using the columns in sequence together. Professor Storm might be having a little bit of a heart attack right now because this was a project that I did in her class when I was a grad student. And believe it or not, it's actually all, don't judge me, it's been a minute since I've actually looked at this, but it should all be prototyped. So if we click on this, it's going to take you to this page and you can add it to your cart. You should be able to. Again, don't judge me, it's a little broken. But again, I didn't need to go through and prototype this to the nth degree. I just needed it to be good enough for me to test the usability tasks that I was testing for, okay? So that's where it's gonna be important that you guys kind of know what is it that my users need to ultimately be able to do so that you know exactly how far you guys have tested it or need to test this. Now, Everyone, stop what you're doing and look at me. We are in a totally different age of design in the sense that this is going to sound a little bit cruel, so I'm going to put it out there and then I'm going to fish it back a little bit. You guys are never going to be able to design a product from the ground. Period. That's not the age of the world that we're in. Every business that exists currently has a product. That doesn't mean that there aren't new businesses that aren't going to crop up. However, I would say that most of you probably aren't going to go and work for agency. Maybe some of you. So I would say that that's really where most of the ground up work is happening, is when a startup goes to an agency. But even to that degree, we're really far beyond that, because usually that business is coming to that agency with something. Whether it's a website that their freaking cousin built, or an app that they had someone on Fiverr build for them, whatever it might be, they are often coming with something. We live in a digital world where even if someone wants to start a business, they have to be at least savvy enough to either figure out how to build a website themselves or hire someone to build it for them. So, that said, there are the part of me fishing it back, unless you go and work for an agency, and even then, you're really not going to build a product from the ground up. You're going to be implementing features to an already existing product, or maybe on a good day, you might be retrofitting an existing product to maybe a new brand strategy or a new direction that the business is going into. So this is actually a really unique position that you guys put yourself into, where you're entering an education environment where we really promote build a product, build a product, build a product, but none of you are ever going to be able to actually do that. You guys have to think about, okay, how do I integrate a feature into a product that already exists? Okay? Why am I telling you this? Because that's how you need to position your portfolios. If you go into an interview and you're like, I built this product from the ground up and and all the things that I did for this massive project, no one's going to care because it's not realistic to the things that they need you to do. Okay? What companies are looking for is, how did you take this one feature and integrate it into this really complex system? Or maybe two features, right? So I'm going to give you guys an example. When I was the UX manager at DragTime, we were brought into an already existing environment. They had been selling cars for decades at that point. And what I got brought in to do was figure out how to sell a car online. They already had an online gallery where you could look at cars and see the cars and even see all the specs on those cars and how old that car was, because it was a used car company. So all of that existed. And you could see all of that, and you could even initiate a conversation with the sales rep online. But what couldn't happen was you buy the car online and the car shows up at your house. That wasn't a thing. So that's what I got brought in to do. And spoiler alert, we figured it out. You see all the ads on Hulu. And not only did we figure it out for DragTime, but we also figured it out for Carvana. Right? Because up until that point, Carvana only had the cool ass vending machines where you put the giant coin in and your car comes down, right? That's all that they had at that point. Plus, still they have the online website where you could see the cars and kind of know what dealership to go to. But here's the thing, I say we figured out how to sell a car online, and that sounds kind of simple, give or take, right? I cannot tell you how overly complex that one stupid fucking thing was. Because when you start to unpack that, it gets extremely complicated. Every single state has a different law about how you sell a car. How long you have to get that buyer registration for that car. what documents need to be signed to purchase that car? What happens when that person takes ownership of that car? And then not to mention just that, but we also, and we had to separate this one project that I got hired for ended up getting separated into multiple different projects because there were so many nuances that we uncovered. And one of them was, okay, what about our business operations? When you're in the business of selling cars, you're actually not really selling a car, you're selling a loan. Has anyone been able to walk up to a dealership and just pay all cash for their car?
If the car is $2,000, yes.
If the car is $2,000, maybe, but mind you, most cars are not $2,000, right? Especially not if it's coming from a dealership. And if it is $2,000, God knows how long you're going to be driving that car for, right? So, oftentimes, I think at the time that I was working there, and I'm sure they're more expensive now, I think the least expensive car we had was maybe $18,000. Anyone got $18,000 sitting in their pocket right now? Maybe, right? It's not out of the question. You can walk up and you can pay cash, but for the most part, most of us would be financing a vehicle, right? So you're selling a loan. But then the way that that company makes their money actually isn't through that loan. That's how the bank makes their money. The car company might make a little bit of money by upselling the car a little bit. Maybe they oftentimes buy those cars at auctions, or you trade in a vehicle and they buy it that way. The company is not making a whole lot of money through that. They might make 10% of the overall cost, maybe. If they buy it at an auction, maybe closer to 15 to 20. But for the most part, you can average it out and say about 15%. What's 15% on, let's aim high, 20,000? Y'all are in college, do the math for me.
$3.
What was it?
$3,000.
$3,000. That's not paying the bills, right? If you sell, let's see, we're a national dealer. If you sell 100 cars, that's a little low. You sell 300 cars across the nation in one day, 3,000 times 300. Someone do that math for me. What was it? 900,000? So close to $1 million. We'll just round up and say $1 million a day. Multiply that by 365 days. You've got $365 million a year. That's nothing in business. Okay? That doesn't pay all your employees to run an organization that is that large. That doesn't pay the rent. It doesn't pay the utilities. It doesn't pay a whole lot for an organization that large. It also doesn't keep your inventory stock. So the way that a business like that makes its money is actually through what we learned and started calling ancillary costs. Gap protection, loss prevention insurance, GPS tracking, things like that. Those are all the ways that a car company makes their money. Okay? And that's not to say that they're not great products. If you get in an accident and your insurance doesn't cover the whole thing, you need that gap protection, just so that you're not out the extra costs that your insurance doesn't cover. So we then learned that we had to include all of that in the sales process. And then beyond that, what happens if someone doesn't have credit, right? What happens if someone is international and they don't have a social security number? What happens if, let's just say they're a bad person and they're trying to use someone else's social security number and name to apply for a car, and they're just using someone else's credit. That's credit fraud, right? We have to be able to identify that and stop it. So a very simple problem very quickly explodes into kind of a big hairy beast, right? So these are what we call edge cases. It kind of goes further. When we got a little bit further into the project, we started learning that we had to start tracking inventory. because if a car sells, but someone else is looking at it, we had to be able to kind of say, hey, we're in the process of selling this car, but if it falls out and no one ends up buying it, we'll contact you, right? So that's a weird sales thing. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. I realize I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I think it was good stuff. So I apologize, I don't remember the origins of your question, but did I answer it? I really went off the rails there. Any other questions? Even prototyping. So it's kind of a Q&A. Prototyping is relatively simple, so you guys really should spend the time, get your layout in check, and then prototype. Questions? Concerns? No? Everyone's just peachy? Go for it. No? Just a deep breath. All right. Speaking of deep breaths, I have most of your guys' papers. Give us a bit. They're going to take a lot of time to go through and grade. We're going to divide it up between myself, Pratik, and Professor Storm. We're building out a little bit of a system that's going to help us to grade these because they're a little bit big. The rubric might change slightly, but you don't need to do anything. We want to make it a little bit more focused on the design that you guys completed. All the things that are in the rubric are still relevant. We just might change the weights slightly. So I apologize for that, but it's just so that we can make it make a little bit more, excuse me, make it make a little bit more sense. So just be patient with us on that. We'll get them to you. Consequently, I will also be hiking 40 miles through the high Sierras this weekend. So I may be a little bit out of pocket. So if you guys need anything over the weekend, I will be responding on Wednesday. So just don't expect quick responses. I apologize. Normally I don't try to travel during the semester, but a unique opportunity presented itself to hike through Yosemite and Kings Canyon along John Muir Trail. So that's not an opportunity you get a whole lot. Hang on, there's a comment here. Would be wonderful to see what other classmates did. Oh, this is actually, Christian, I appreciate this. Do we want to just have a little bit of a review of everyone's magazines? Yeah. I'm totally open to doing it. I'm gonna say this. I've sort of browsed through everyone's already, just like very quick rapid fire intake. I say this with love and respect. Some of them are interestingly bad. Some of them are just bad. Some of them are really interesting. Again, I say all of it with love, but there's always room for improvement, right? I think everyone is doing very well in the class. So that's also part of why we want to change up the rubric a little bit, is to give a little bit of lenience for some of my discretions, which are, I told you guys to build the hierarchy for the text. Some people went in and they used like 16-point font as their base copy, and that's just like far too large. So little things like that. This is what happens when you test a new concept. So I'm happy to walk through some of these. Let me go and grab them really quick. Now that said, I can't really bar, just because of the way that these files are working, I can't see names, I don't have anyone's consent, but I think it's healthy that everyone kind of gets used to sharing their work publicly. So I'm just going to go through all of them. Okay. I'll try to reserve a couple of comments, but actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's get your guys' critical eye in check a little bit. I want to hear from you guys what you think about it. Again, let's take a moment, just for a minute, to review how we give feedback. Okay. Have I gone over CASC in class? Okay. It's an acronym. anytime we give feedback, we should start with this. Now, in this class, this is kind of implied. You're here to learn, you're going to get feedback. That's just how it works. C stands for consent. I'm going to spell this wrong. Someone spell check me. See, I already started off. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. Started off strong. Why is it important that we get consent to give feedback?
Maybe they don't open.
If they don't want it, you scare them.
Guys, this industry moves really, really quickly. Okay. Sometimes we might be working on something, and if someone's like just pointing over your shoulder and they're like, I don't like this, and this looks ugly, and do this, and blah, blah, blah. You might not be in a space where you're like, I'm totally focused on something else right now. Let me finish that, and then we can talk about this. Additionally, I think this is maybe even more important than that, because that's going to happen regardless. We all can be a little bit emotional sometimes, myself included. And I don't know about you guys, but I pour a lot of love into the work that I do. I think those of you guys that went to Press Check yesterday, you probably saw a little bit of that. I take a lot of pride in the work that I do. I get excited about the work that I do, and just seeing something roll off the press is kind of. I think it's important to get consent because you need to make sure that that person is emotionally prepared to hear your work looks like shit. Okay, that takes a little bit of emotional preparation because there will always be feedback. You can always make your work better. So consent is important to get. Since you all submitted your work, that gives me consent to give you feedback. So that's why I feel comfortable showing this today. So feedback should always be consensual. It should also be actionable. Okay? Feedback does no one any good if you go up to them and you say, I don't like it. That is not helpful. That is not actionable feedback. Great, you don't like it. I don't fucking care. You're not my target audience, right? So your feedback needs to be actionable. What is it that needs to be done? The typography in this doesn't match the mood of the image, right? Like something like that, that's a little bit more actionable. I know what to do with it. I can then go and I can take my typography and revise it, or maybe swap out the image, okay? Specific. Now, these two go together, okay? You kind of can't have one without the other. In order to have actionable feedback, that feedback needs to be specific. Tell me what it is that needs to be changed. If you come up to me and say, I don't like the color blue, again, I don't care what you like, right? If the data and the research shows that our customers react to blue because it is emblematic of trust and it is kind of calming, right? Like whatever that might be, I have specific reasons why I chose the color blue, okay? So when I say specific, point out what it is and why it is that that's not working for you, okay? I don't like this typography, or this typography is not working with the image because it is a humanist font and that image is very modern, right? So that specification. Again, all of this, every time you give feedback, you can always rely on a couple of things. Your design elements, your design principles, history of design, kind of looking towards your predecessors, as well as your fundamentals of typography and language. We haven't quite talked about semiotics, but you can also rely on semiotics and culture to help you with these things. So consensual, actionable, specific. And this last one is interesting. This one turns a lot of heads. Kind. I'm going to tell you what this is not. Kind and nice don't mean the same thing. I like to think I'm a very kind professor, but I'm maybe not a very nice professor. And what I mean by that is that I will always tell you what you need to hear, but I will maybe not tell you what you want to hear. Okay? I'm always going to tell you what's going to make you a better designer, or a better working professional, or a better creative, or just what I think is good advice. What I will never do is blow smoke up your ass and just tell you, yep, looks good. Just because I don't have time or whatever, right? So, or even just like kind of beat around the bush. Sometimes beating around the bush is the nice thing to do. Where you're like, I really don't want to hurt your feelings, but it kind of, I don't, right? If it's not, I think everyone here is working on their portfolios, so if it's not portfolio worthy, it would be very unkind of me to tell you, yep, looks great. Okay? So sometimes feedback can be harsh, and that's why it's important to get consent. Okay? So now we have this framework. Okay? I want you guys, we didn't get his consent. No, okay. Sorry, I really pointed him out. I'll apologize to him when he comes back. So we have this framework now. Let's use this as we're going through each of these magazines to help give feedback. Agree?
I have a problem for that.
Sure.
So yesterday when we are in the print, you said about the color screening. So can you explain that, how to screen the color before?
Let me do that at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Remind me, actually. My little ADHD brain always needs a note. Okay. Let me share my screen. I remember now. All right, let's start with this. Marcella designed this. Let's start with the spread. What do we think? What are some thoughts? Give you guys some time to kind of internalize this one. Is it helpful if I do that? Does that help?
Yeah.
You like the logo? I agree, I like the logo. I would like to point out, is there one issue with the logo that anyone sees? Yeah.
For the last decades, if that projection to the left was at the bottom, I think it would be symmetric and would look a lot cleaner.
Okay. You want to know what I see?
The first
letter.
yeah, it's like a P.
Design through the decades.
Oh.
Right? So a little bit problematic, but not a huge deal, right? Is everyone familiar with what I call first pancake syndrome? What happens when you make the first pancake?
Comes out perfect.
You always fuck it up. This whole class is based on everyone getting out their first pancakes in each of these softwares, right? So I don't, to be clear, I don't think this is a fuck up. I actually think it's quite nice. What's really working here is sort of the composition of this cover. The composition's really strong, right? You have this one very powerful image, and then you balance the text. Now, there's a couple of little things, like for example, under caricature and surrealism, you have this tangent where surrealism kind of overlaps the shoulder a little bit. I would advise to move it down. Just take the word surrealism. Obviously, this would create a runt, but in headlines, runts are sometimes acceptable. Okay, so moving that down would help. I also feel like everything visually is kind of crammed up in the top left corner, which is okay, but I feel like they could be spaced out a little bit more. And then similarly on this back cover, center justified text is just problematic in general. It's hard to read. It's okay to center justify a headline, but body copy typically not. So I would recommend right justifying that. And then also the back cover, I'm going to use a little bit of a kind word, but maybe not a nice word. And I would say the back is just a little boring, right? Yeah.
Sir, I think because we're looking at two pages right now, front and back, I
Yeah.
think if you were to just look at the front page by itself, I think it will probably be different. In a way that like right now, like with the back cover there, it's just taking the attention away from the front covers. I find the balance too strong on the left side as opposed to the right side.
I agree. So my eye is sort of trained to be seeing things in spread view just because that's how we do it a lot in the industry. This is a spread view where you're seeing two pages at one time.
Right.
So I'm able to sort of isolate one page from the other in my brain. But you're right. Again, I think this is a really strong cover.
Right.
It needs a little bit of spacing. I think this guy could come down, the first Mexican woman in caricature art and surrealist, and a surrealist. That could probably come down to the bottom left, and then give all of this a little bit of space. The logo is also just like huge.
There's a lot of space above our head too, right? So there's a lot of white negative space or white space.
Maybe a little bit of cropping. I honestly kind of like the asymmetry of the photography. It gives you some space to work with the text.
Right.
But just kind of spacing out the typography a little bit. Maybe Emilia Ortiz could be a little bit bigger or diagonal or something, just to introduce something interesting.
Oh, it's nice.
It's a nice table of contents. You have a little bit of what is called a tangent on the right-hand side. I really like how they've taken the logo and just kind of made it larger than life. That's really cool. But on the right-hand spread, I would recommend bringing it down a little bit so that that word table of contents it's creating a lot of tension, right? Does anyone feel a little uncomfortable looking at the right-hand side? A little bit? Okay. That's because it's so close to the edge. It's like either put it on the edge or get it off the edge. Don't straddle the line.
I think the T is sort of breaking the center line too.
It might be. Overall, I just think the right-hand page needs a little bit more space, a little bit more margin. And then even the spacing between each of the elements, it's not quite sure whether it's not quite sure whether surrealism's rise in Mexico is relevant to the rise of surrealism or surrealist art. There's not enough separation between those in order for me to make closure within my design elements and principles. Okay? So if these were tightened and a little bit closer to the rise of surrealism than surrealist art, I think we would be in a little bit of a better shape. Okay? Ooh, hang on. Really nice spread. What kind of grid are we using here?
Manuscript.
We're using a little bit of a divergent of a manuscript grid, in the sense that I would imagine what this person might have done is like, it might be just a columnar grid, but the sizing of this text and the placement feels like a manuscript just due to its aspect ratio and its placement. But where it deviates is that it's not in a manuscript placement. It's kind of the manuscript size, but moved over to the right. So that's actually a really interesting use. I have a really big problem with this, and that's the use of hyphenation. But that's an easy change. Go into your text box, right? Also, the text is just large. It could be, I think it works here, but it's a little bit bigger than it really needs to be. Pretty nice. The text has a lot of leading in it. Also, we end the paragraph on a semicolon for some reason, so I'm not quite sure about that.
So would this work better if it was like white text as opposed to dark?
No, why would we not do white text?
I'm just saying that. I'm just asking.
Why would we not do white text though?
Is it contrast?
Yeah. So white on yellow, never a good combo. You're just going to destroy. In digital, we often use the term accessibility. We didn't really have a word for that back when I started, and really in print. But I think we're adopting a lot of the digital terminology to print these days. But that would be inaccessible. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute because I think this is a really important note. Watch your eyeballs. I think a really important note is that not all designs need to be accessible. You can sometimes do some really creative things. For example, at the press check event yesterday, we ended up printing white on white. Why would we do that? We were trying to create some sort of texture, right? And when you're working with a physical element like print, you have this added dimension that you can work with, and that is the fourth dimension. You can start incorporating something that feels a little different, feels really luxurious. Maybe on Thursday, I'll bring a book that we bought as a sample. Everyone brace yourself. It's a $3,000 book that I bought as a sample for another class that is designing a book for my photos, and it is quite luxurious, and only in the sense of texture, right? Like they've taken the time on some of the photos to apply a gloss varnish while the paper is matte. And then they've taken the time on the cover to do like some embossing and canvas cover and things like that. So when you start getting into design, hold on, I'm forming a thought. Okay. Go with me here. This just happened in my head, so just let's indulge me a little bit. I want you guys, just for a moment, to think about there's no societal norms. There's no financial barriers, nothing, there's no regulations, nothing is in your way. Think about that for a minute. What is a dream you have always had? Just think about that for a second. It can be a personal dream, it can be a career dream, it can be anything, really. Something that you've always wanted, something you've wanted to do, something you've wanted to experience, anything, a dream. Just one at a time, come up to the board and write that dream down. Just go with me here. Just come on, write it on the board. If you're online, throw it in the chat. Feel free to use the whole board. I'll get rid of this. What time are we out of this class? 45. Great. We may not have a whole lot of time to go through everyone's or everyone's newspaper. Or what is it, magazine? I'm a little tired. Oh, sorry. Think big. Everyone just think big.
Mine's been because what do you think? I was like, that's I do that thing that does work. I don't know that.
It's just single page. You're not ready.
Why not? I'm still like limited. If I stop working for 5 seconds, I don't say anything else. If I can.
If you look at it from 100%.
I'm just kind of, and that paragraph I was talking about, or how, is. I didn't know that was where it was. I wouldn't have guessed that.
You wouldn't have guessed that?
No. What do we see the most up here?
Travel.
Travel, what else?
Working.
Travel and sort of work goals, right? No, don't change it.
I read wrong name.
Oh, it's okay.
I read wrong name.
I don't know who Henry Potter is, but I think I'll draw some clues. Here's the reason why I did this. And there's no right answer here. I have a deep concern that the next and upcoming generations, mostly after your guys' age, but I'm seeing a little bit of it in your guys' responses here. I have a very deep concern that future generations are forgetting how to dream. And I'm trying not to cry because this hurts my heart so much. Every single one of you, for the most part, are more concerned about your experiences and what you're going to be doing, but not about what you care about. Actually, buying some Henry Potter Legos sounds like a lot more fun than working in the golf industry.
Okay. If you like golf, I'm just saying.
I'm not yucking your yum. And traveling, I think, is huge, right? I think everyone really needs to be mindful of stepping away from work, but I think there's a cause and effect there, right? We're all so burnt out, we're all so tired of working that all we want to do is travel, right? When I ask people, really sort of myself and older, this question, and usually you kind of have to retrofit the question to be, what did you want to be when you grew up? Or when you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up? And oftentimes the answers always come back as like, I want to be a policeman, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a microbiologist, whatever. And granted, the question is formatted a little bit differently, but life before was so desperately focused on who you want to be, what you want to be, and our work made us who we are, right? And I think we really need to start shifting the question away from what do you want to be when you grow up to who do you want to be? What do you want to be known for? What do you want your impact on the world to be? And if that's working for a golf company, or having this really cool collection of Henry Potter Legos, or working in Walt Disney. Fun fact, I actually used to work for Disney. Or even just traveling or building a company, right? Those things are huge. And I will tell you guys this, when when I picked up a camera for the first time 12, 13 years ago at this point, I didn't know what that was going to do to me. But at this point in my life, photography was the reason I went to design school in the first place. Photography, I remember vividly sitting down with the coordinator, whatever you might call them, the admissions rep, maybe that's what they're called. And I vividly remember them asking me the question, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I don't know, I like photography and I just want to do more with it. And he was like, great, so you want to go into video? And I was like, no. I like photos, I like images, I love watching movies, but I don't like working with time-based media. It's just not my thing. I was like, okay, well, what about graphic design? And I was like, that sounds more interesting. I just didn't have words for that. I didn't realize that that was a thing. I didn't realize that that was a profession, right? And ever since I picked up that camera, I knew that it would be super, super fun if I could, like, one day launch a gallery, or one day, like, sell my photos, or whatever it was. Really, the gallery is still kind of like a really cool goal. So that was something that I always kept in the back of my mind. And I would, while I was in school, I did design because I knew photography on itself, although some people can make some really cool careers out of it, it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I didn't want to lose touch with what I loved so much. Because I know that as soon as you take something that you love and you make it a business, it's no longer a hobby, it's now a job. So instead of me making it a job, I made it something that allowed me to do this, travel the world. And it became more of an escape from the job than it was my hobby. So I really want you guys to just think about that a little bit. Think about your dream. And I promise this is getting somewhere because I really think that that long pause that I had was sort of an existential crisis of me trying to get you guys to think a little bit earlier about what you want to do in Module 6. Because I think starting here is a great starting spot. Think about your dreams. Think about what you want to do. Think about how you could put that into your portfolio. Okay? Don't ask me where that started. It totally just popped into my head. Think about that. Anyways, let's get back to this. Little bit of a serious moment, kind of dying out there. All right, we looked at that one. Let's take a look at this one. By the way, I think it's really beneficial when you guys are exporting these things to export them in tabloid view, because then you can actually see it for what it is, what people are going to see at one time. Right? Granted, you may not see the front and back cover at one time, but you can definitely see a spread at one time. Okay? So let's just take a look at the front for a second. What do we think? What do we notice? The logo is?
Spanish.
It's in Spanish, yeah. What do we think about that?
That was good, I like it.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's actually really balanced. Right? What about the headline text?
It's not readable.
It's not reading?
Like the life is something.
Left with P.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to read, mostly because your core generation kind of stopped learning how to read cursive. And not that this is cursive. Wait, hold on. Is that a US thing? Does everyone know what cursive is?
Yeah.
Okay, I heard a no over there.
No, too. I have been taught to read cursive.
You haven't been touching?
I have.
Have, okay, cool. Yeah, a little bit hard to read, the spacing's a little odd, but by and large, it's a good cover. Again, you get this one primary image that reads really well. It just needs a little bit of typographic adjustment, okay? There's a table of contents. Nice image. I probably should have said this a little sooner in the class, but gradients are a little bit problematic. They have this really nasty, although this isn't the issue here, gradients have a really nasty habit of being inaccessible. Also, what do you notice about this gradient? This might be a little bit of a nitpicky thing, but I see it all the time, and it drives me
going towards the spine. No, wait, no, it's not.
No, I don't care about
Does
that.
it blind the page number kind of?
No. Particularly like right in this middle region.
Yeah,
It's getting muddy.
yeah.
It's just like the colors aren't quite blending together. And there's a very specific way, if you want colors to blend together, you have to use blending options in Illustrator. In fact, I've had to do that for a project I can't show you guys. But there is a way that you can get that not to happen. So remind me and I can maybe show you. I think this is really cool. This is only 1/2 of 2 pages that produce a timeline of this artist's life. I think this is pretty clever. All right, what's going on here? What's the first thing that I'm going to notice? I've used this word once already today.
The first letter.
The A. What's going on with the A? It's a tangent. Get really comfortable with that word because I see it all the time. When this is, again, I mean this endearingly, this is like a horror movie to me. Because this is like the killer standing right behind you and you don't even notice, right? It's so close you can touch it, right? So you just gotta get everything away. Let elements stand on their own, let them breathe, right? When you're doing drop caps, you don't need indentation, so watch out for that. I love that this person explored drop caps. That's really nice, but pull them back, that way they're not indented. It's also a little bit of a text dense page, but the drop caps kind of help break it up. I would just recommend maybe like breaking up the text a little bit, add some visual interest. I do like that they've added like the corner piece up there, it just needs to be pushed away a little bit. Yeah, by and large, a good piece. All right, Susan Kerr. There's the cover. Let's talk about this cover a little bit. What do we got?
It looks retro, like from the past.
It looks retro.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, Susan Kerr is very much a retro designer, so I think that's fitting. What's here or maybe not here that other magazine covers, or that just not even magazine covers in this class, but magazine covers out in the world have?
More text.
More text, so it's a little bit it's a little naked. Yeah. What else?
Hierarchies.
The hierarchy is largely non-existent, right? Everything's kind of the same size. Also, designed through the decades is kind of in this white box and not really doing a whole lot. It's just kind of there. It's not integrated with the design. It doesn't work with anything, right?
This is super retro.
Yeah. We've got, again, another runt. We also have a bit of a tangent where the Q and the F are a little too close to the edge. Guys, get things away from the edge. Think of the edge like a cliff. Keep yourself safe from the cliff. Yes.
This would the runt be excused because it's like the heading?
Nope. Nope. Yeah. Headings still follow design principles. And when we're thinking about this, you're kind of creating closure. I would argue that you don't even need that blue box back there. Just let the text be text. Oftentimes, the first thing that new design students often do is they'll go into whatever software they're using, and they'll look for some of the flashiest things, right? drop shadow, bezel curves, backgrounds, gradients, and you just kind of throw it all on there and see what sticks, because you don't really know what you're doing yet, right?
Could you argue that this person is doing all this intentionally just so they kind of bring back how they used to do things?
I would say that Susan Kerr would roll in her grave.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say that lovingly, I promise. What's working really nicely, this introduction page is beautiful. It's got great hierarchy. It probably could use a little bit more spacing between the first paragraph and the second paragraph.
Yeah.
Just creating a little bit of space between those two. But by and large, great hierarchy, right? You can clearly tell where to start and you know where to end. Even this is really nice, right? Aside from the text being a little too close to the edge, right? But again, is this black background needed, or is it just overweighting the page, right? Could that text just have been black and it would have given all those icons in that typeface, which I'm not quite sure why that typeface is inverse broadsided, but it would have given it a little bit more space to breathe and make those the focal points. Because let's face it, no one here wants to read. We all want to look at pretty pictures, right? So let the pretty pictures drive the text and not the text drive the pictures, right? Some great examples in here. It does seem that we're reusing some images. Oh, hang on, big no-no in here. What's going on up here? It's a little hard to tell on the big screen. Nope. Nope.
There.
It's stretched out.
I don't know what this is.
Oh, there it reaches off. It's stretched out.
Yeah.
It's squished.
Yeah.
It's squished. Hold shift. Please, for the love of humanity, hold shift. Actually, I think all of these images might have a little bit of squishy squashy going on. So just watch out for that. It's not a bad article, but it needs a little bit of refinement. Okay. All right, let's talk about Frank Gehry for a little bit. What do we think about the cover? Does everyone know who Frank Gehry is? Because you definitely know his work.
It's an architect.
He's an architect.
Oh no. It's right there. Nice.
Who's been to LA? Wow. Everyone from LA sat on that side of the room. Anyone been to Barcelona? I think it's Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Barcelona. I do that anyways because I'm wearing my Invisalign. He built the Walt Disney Concert Hall, which I would be surprised if it's not in here.
That's his biggest. Oh, the fonts are.
There's
I built out. I told you Portugal.
Bilbao. I'm sorry, my bad. There's the Walt Disney Concert Hall. Paris.
Poster vibes more than it's giving magazine.
Yeah, okay, so let's sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit. I think this is a classic example of text too big, make text small. When you're reading, this is really just kind of choppy, right? It's hard to look at, it's hard to actually get a picture of what it's saying. There's also a little bit of alignment issues that I'm not sure what's going on. So there's a little bit of oddity in there. I think the logo has some issues, but I see where they're going with it. I'm gonna leave that there. All right, Basquiat. Let's start with the cover. What do we think?
I like it.
I have no opinion.
No, self-criticism.
What do we think about the cover?
I like it though, the part for the hip hop street art.
Yeah. Now, this is one of those interesting things where I would actually pull back from my comments about a tangent. Simply because the tangent is serving as a baseline. And it's allowing the text to kind of blend with the background. I would say that if there were one thing that could maybe make this a little bit better, is if the king of street art all fit within the white space there to actually create some connection. Really, that if we're using design elements and principles terms, that would be closure, right? Because we don't need that information to know that that's the end of the line.
We also want to change it all to caps so that the letters that go below don't.
I'll be honest, I would. Oh, we're listening.
Always.
That's creepy.
Always.
That was odd.
Never alone.
I would probably have to see that in order to know whether or not one was better than the other. If you did that though, I think either way, I might recommend that Jean-Michel Basquiat was actually title cased as opposed to all caps. I don't think it's bad in all caps. Oh, you know what you can do? Simple fix. Take Mr. Basquiat here and just let the white space be on top of it instead of cutting him out.
Yeah.
Because then you'll actually get that connection. And then yeah, maybe experiment a little bit with the uppercase versus lowercase on each of these. Notice a word that I used there. What did I say?
Uppercase lowercase?
No, it started with an E. It's a science word. Experiment. What did I not say? Playing around with it. Okay, that's a phrase that I hear so much in this industry, and it hits my ears like nails. It's stop it. Stop saying I'll play around with it. Because that makes the very serious work that we all do and contribute to this industry and to business and to everything, and it just diminishes it to, oh, you're just playing around. Right? I'm experimenting with this, right? It makes this more science than art. Okay? O'Keeffe. Nice cover. Yeah. Now, there's a little bit of a, how do I say? There's a little bit of a trade-off with this assignment, and that is that sometimes, depending on your artist, it has this sort of uncanny effect of if your artist is known as a certain era, like a lot of Georgia O'Keeffe paintings, although they're gaining popularity again, they were really popular in like, I might misspeak here, but I would say like, you could expect a Georgia O'Keeffe painting in maybe your parents' or maybe your grandparents' house, just depending on what age you are. So it can, when you're designing with their work, it can have this sort of causal effect of making your work look as old as theirs. That's happening a little bit here. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's kind of giving it this aged look. I think that's fine. Just something to think about. Okay. Really quickly, back layout. Oh, chef's kiss. It's maybe still a little bit boring, but at least they've taken the painting and put a little bit of that on the back just to kind of carry the design a little bit. But yeah, we could fill in a little bit of white space, but I really like what they did here. They really just need to take this pipe that's separating contact and coverage story and center it. It's okay if it's not centered on the page, but center it between the items. Okay? Now, I want to look for something very specific. I don't think this one's going to happen. Again, just mind your spacing between headlines. Watch your runs, right? Also, I'm going to say this once, and everyone needs to goddamn listen. Stop full justifying your text. Don't full justify your text. This is so bad. And I'm not judging this design. Is this yours? No? Okay. I want to make sure I'm not like bludgeoning anyone here. What happens here is when you full justify text, you introduce rivers. So you can kind of follow the river down. It's all the spaces in between the text, because what happens when you full justify text is it takes the spaces between the words and it just divides the width of that out across. So it makes these really awkward spaces like here between best known, most well known for painting, right? Notice how those spaces in between those words are much wider than the next line down. So you introduce these rivers in the text that are really distracting. Left alignment, all the way left aligned. Okay? Don't justify your text. Watch out for runts. Those guys there. One word at the bottom of the paragraph. Get rid of that. There's one specific application I really want to look for because I think this is a mark of a really good designer. So let me try to find one. In a second. Oh, okay, here's one. It's really small to see. What's happening here?
Quotation marks.
It's a quotation mark. What's wrong with it?
It's coming to the text field.
The quote is coming into the text field. You guys gotta set hanging punctuation. What should happen with punctuation, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Watch your eyes. There we go. Give the camera a second to focus, and then let me zoom it in. There we go. So when you're working with quotations, you want your text to align like this. So quotation should be outside of the alignment of the text. So within your paragraph styles, YouTube this, look up hanging punctuation, okay? Oftentimes all you have to do is, I think it's just text box or a checkbox within Illustrator. You just gotta check it, okay? All right, I think that's what we've got time for. Any questions before we break? Good. Back here, someone had asked, while we were at the press check event, what was that? Yes. While we were at the press check event, we had seen some labels that had what's called a color screen applied to it. So let me pull up Illustrator for a second, and I'll show you guys how to do it.
Not a bad thing.
All right.
Yeah. So like some of it felt like
Even he said.
I was more learning about the artist. And in some of the pages, it felt like I was just like actually like viewing like.
Okay. So if you guys want to see how you would set, really quickly, we're still online. So while we were at the press check event, there was a difference in something called a color screen, and we were all asking how we set that up. Okay. Now, the first option you might think of is to come up to opacity. Sorry, Illustrator just updated.
It's seen under fill stroke and basically.
There we go. Right here. Now, you might think that you would do that in order to sort of set the color back and only get a little bit of it to come through. But the problem with this is if you use an opacity and you have another color behind it, it just looks icky, right? So instead of doing that, I'm going to set my color to 100%, and I'm going to change the type of color it is. So notice here that it's just regular red. If I double click on that and change it from a process color to a spot color, when I come up to this guy, this changes from CMYK to T. The T stands for tint. Now if I change this to 30, it's no longer grabbing that green from underneath. It's just lowering the amount of color that lays on the page. Okay? So that's how you do it. Cool? All right, have a good day.
It's right.